live!
We're live! Hello, crew, and to anyone tuned in on the Krewella Facebook page. We are live here at Facebook in New York City, and we're honored to be with an amazing group of women here. I'm Jahan from Krewella, in case you don't know.
I'm Yasmin from Krewella, also in case you don't know.
Yasmin, you want to go around and introduce who we're with?
We are here with Nadya from Period Movement. We are here with Sam, who's an incredible comedian, and Laura from the brand thinx. I'm going to let you guys go a little bit into who you are and what you do more than what I can do.
Of course.
I'm going to let you kick it off
today.
Yes. Well, we're so excited to be here today. I'm Nadya Okamoto. I am 21, and I'm the founder and executive director of an organization called Period, the Menstrual Movement. We are a global youth-run NGO fighting to end period poverty and period stigma through service, education, and advocacy. So we distribute products to people in need, trying to change the way people think, talk, and learn about periods through education, and we're fighting for period equity through period policy. So excited to be here today to celebrate Giving Tuesday, which is a special day, the Tuesday after every Thanksgiving, sort of to maybe heal ourselves from the Black Friday and Cyber Monday shenanigans, and just take a moment to give back as we enter the holiday season.
Great. And hi, everyone. My name is Laura Blackburn. I'm the director of the Give Rise Social Impact program at thinx. It is such a joy to be here with everybody and talking periods on Giving Tuesday, especially, as Nadya said, on the heels of Black Friday, so we can use our money for good today. We're really committed at thinx to moving the needle on menstrual equity, and we do so through education, through grassroots activism in partnership with Period, and through our product donations.
And my name's Sam J. I'm a comic and a writer for Saturday Night Live, and I'm here because I'm funny. I don't show.
Yes.
And I just learned what period equity is last week, but I'm all in.
Amazing. So we're here, we're just going to have basically a funny but also frank conversation about periods and period poverty and period stigma. As you watch, there should be a live donate button on your screen, so at any point you can just click to donate right there. The proceeds will go to our organization, Period, which will directly benefit people in need who need period products and also empower our global network of campus chapters. So to date, we've addressed about $950,000 through Period distribution. We're hoping to get to $1 million by the end of the year, so please help us get there. For every $2, we're able to address another period. We're just going to kind of jump in. So as we all know, periods are not the most comfortable thing to talk about, right? We grew up with the euphemisms like time of the month, and I know Strawberry Week and Shark Week are other ones, right? But there's always this sort of, discomfort around talking about periods. And I sort of thought that for our audience, we would jump in and just hit it right out of the water and destigmatize it. So can we start, if you could just share a funny period story, a scary period story, or just a memory that you have about periods, or maybe your first reaction or emotions when you got your first period, just so we can really get into all of the menstrual talk.
I know we all have fucked up or funny or traumatizing, but now funny stories about our periods. I have one. I can just dive right in.
Jump in.
I got my period when I was 13, which was super traumatizing because my oldest sister got it when she was, 17? You got it when you were like, how old? 15?
I blocked it out of my
You don't
memory.
remember?
I don't.
I got it the youngest is all I'm trying to say out of the 3 girls in the family, and I was like, I'm fucking cursed. Like, why did I get it the youngest? And I'm in 7th grade, and I was in like the last class of the day during my first period, like really trying to understand what was happening in my body, how to control the flow, how to wear a pad, like all that shit. And I started bleeding on my seat through my pants.
Oh.
And,
What were you wearing?
I was wearing black pants.
Okay.
But I was wearing red Converse. Okay, so this is where it's really weird. I started to sit like this and just bled all over my for the rest of my class. And it was the last period. I'm not going to sit like this anymore. But it was the last period of the day. Thank fuck. But
That's
yeah.
innovative, though. That was smart.
I know, shoes, great period solution. Yeah.
Wait, so do you still have these shoes?
No.
You could have sold them on eBay.
Super gross.
real bloody shoes.
So did you so you have 2 older sisters,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Did you know what a period was? Did you know how to use period products?
I mean, No, not until I got it.
Okay.
And then it was
so
just
you never
like, you
were
just
like,
figure it out.
I was a bad older sister because I didn't know how to handle my own period. I couldn't use a tampon at the time because I didn't want to stick anything in me because it was just creepy to put something up there when I, was young
when you're young.
and prude. Nothing wrong with that. So yeah, it was probably not a good.
None of us knew what was happening in that household. None of us knew.
See, I'm the oldest of 3 girls, but in our family, like, I remember with both my sisters, like, sitting on next to the toilet, like, turning away, being like, the hole is here, you just have to move it over. Like, but
Which hole?
yeah, like, I don't see a hole. That was like all my memories of my sisters. What about you?
God.
Period story.
Oh, I have a couple. Let's see. Okay, I'll just share 2 really quick ones.
Okay.
One time, and I'm only saying this because we've given so much money to United Airlines from touring.
Oh, no.
But one time I was crammed in economy on like a 17-hour flight or something. That's how we fly. Unless we get an upgrade, which is great. And I always feel bad being in the window seat because I don't want to wake up the snoring people next to me.
For sure.
So sometimes I just hold it the whole flight.
Yep.
So I was just holding it in and I bled through my tampon. I know it's a huge no-no, don't lecture me. And I stay in the seat and I'm really proud of myself because like United, like we give you a lot of business. And
You're proud that you bled on the seat?
It was kind of satisfying. I was like, I was like, I'm giving them so much and it's cool. So yeah, it was like, I know it's a little screwed up. The other one, I just want to say shout out to former partners who are really understanding when you stay in their sheets.
Yes.
Yeah, 'cause I think
Definitely.
that's such a true sign, or like a sign of like a really understanding partner is when you stay in their like Egyptian cotton sheets and you're crying. They're just like, it's okay. So I guess those are my the 2 stories that come to mind right away.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I had a super traumatic first period experience. I was 10 and I was changing into my bathing suit to go swimming with like a new friend.
Oh.
And I went to the bathroom and I was like, oh my God, no, like I'm not ready. I want to be a kid still. And then I knew also that I couldn't go swimming. So like it was like a part of my freedom that was taken away in a way. So that was super traumatizing. And then I also just remember in college changing my tampon at my then boyfriend's house. And there was for whatever reason, no garbage can in the bathroom. And I was so mortified. I was like, okay, well, I can't flush it because I know that they have faulty plumbing. What am I going to do? And I just hid it under the sink. And I was like, all right, well, hopefully this will get taken care of. And like, let me just forget about it because I was too embarrassed to walk out of the bathroom to the kitchen where the nearest garbage was and throw it away. And like, it was just so insane to me because now I work in such a space where it's open and I have supportive friends and a really supportive partner. And it's funny, like, looking back to that experience more than 10 years ago to be like, okay, that's so weird. Just go to the kitchen and throw your tampon.
Right.
Don't be weird about it.
You know what's really interesting is you brought something up, this idea of your first period signifying no longer being a kid, you know? And I think that's so interesting and something that fascinates me about menstruation is like menarche, your first period. It's something that is a biological phenomenon, right? It happens to your body, but this interesting way that society has constructed your first period to be like the signifier of womanhood, right? And I hate to say that because it's gender exclusive of people who don't identify as women, but I think throughout history, because it's when your body can now become pregnant, it does symbolize this like, wow, you are no longer a kid anymore, right? You are grown up. And, all over the world, there are consequences to that as well that we'll talk about more, but I just wanted to call that out. It's super interesting. Yeah. What about you? Funny period story?
There's so many. Like, hearing everyone talk, I'm like, it's just bringing back all these memories that I think I just forgot about or, like, deemed unimportant and just kind of moved through more than, like, but looking back at them now, I'm like, oh, those things were kind of poignant points. Yeah. I think I remember before I even got my period, I was in, like, 8th grade. I was a very late bloomer, but I was in, like, 8th grade, and I had a sponge roller in my bag because I had one in my hair. And I, like, put it in my backpack because I wanted, like, my bang to be curly. And it fell out my backpack, and all the girls said it was a tampon. And I remember, like, it being, like, the talk of the class for the day that I had a tampon. And I just remember feeling really embarrassed and, like, really defensive. Like, I did not have a tampon, like, losing my mind. And then when I finally got my period, I was, like, 13, I think, or 14. And I called my best friend at the time. And I was like, oh, my God, I got my period. And then she just laughed really hard at me. And she was like, today is the first day to the end of your life or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And I was
Like,
just like,
you are doomed.
and it was kind of like that kind of a feeling like, damn, it's over. And now this thing is going to come every month. But I feel like I wasn't ever really embarrassed as much as it just felt like a hell of an inconvenience.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
now I'm going to be inconvenienced every month for pretty much the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
Yeah.
I just remember feeling like that.
That's a great transition point because I think that's one of the reasons why I care so much about this movement, right? Like, people always ask me, oh, if you're a period girl and you love talking about periods, you must love getting your period, right? And I'm always like, no, I actually hate getting my period. It's a hassle. You have to think about what you're going to wear. You have to think about having the right products. But it's why I care so deeply about this work, because we're just trying to address a basic need so that people can go about their lives.
And it's like the way it's set up in society is what makes it such a hassle. Like, when you were talking about the bathroom, like, I remember getting in trouble because, like, I wasn't, like, hiding my pads properly in the bathroom trash. Because I had brothers, and my mother would be like, you just left, the pad wrapper on the top. You don't do that. Wrap it in some tissue. And it's like, why do I have to go through, like, 30 steps just to, like, do something? And I know it wasn't, like, my mom being bad. It's just that's what she was taught to do. And she thought that's how you, like, are a lady and respectfully deal with your period. Like, I remember one time I grabbed a pad and I put it in my back pocket because I was always a tomboy and I didn't carry purses, and I was like, but I gotta bring this pad with me. And my aunt, like, freaked out. She was like, you're just gonna walk like that with it in your pocket? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, I don't think you should do that. I was like, I don't know. I don't know where else should I put it.
Yeah. So we're here on Giving Tuesday, and, click the donate live donate. But, we're here, with the work that Period does is really about addressing this concept of period poverty, or not concept, reality of period poverty, right? And I would define period poverty as just simply not being able to afford access to period products due to a lack of income. And, thinx and Period recently partnered up on a study we did with the Harris Poll, finding that 1 in 5 teens in the U.S. have struggled to afford period products due to a lack of income, that 84% of teens, and this still gets me, have either missed class or know someone who has missed class due to period poverty. So I wanted to kind of turn it to all of you and ask, when did you learn about period poverty, and why is it an important issue to you personally?
I learned because of you, because I read your book, Period Power. To be honest, I never really thought of how lack of access to education or even period products can affect someone's potential in their career, in their education, in their social environment. Because, like, I am privileged. I haven't been in a situation where I can't afford, like, tampons. I buy organic tampons when I buy them. So it's not an issue that I had to deal with. So that's why I think it's really important. Your movement is really important to show us how this affects all of us. Even if it's not affecting me directly, it's preventing equality. And I think at the end of the day, we all want balance. We want more people who menstruate to succeed in life and to be in positions of power. So the people who are in government are making, and CEOs of companies are representing what the reality is. So, and maybe you can kind of, like, help connect the dots and explain how lack of access is interfering with our ability as a society to have a balance between the masculine and feminine.
Yeah, I mean, how I always frame it is I try to say that for us, the end goal isn't just about periods, right? But as you said, the end goal is about gender equality. But when you look at how gender equality is defined by these factors of education and healthcare and economic mobility and representation in politics and decision making, there are examples and real data behind how period poverty and a lack of access to period products or culture around periods prevents fully achieving equality in all of those areas, right? Periods are the #1 reason why girls miss school in developing countries. It's the single event in many countries that leads to girls dropping out of school, getting married early, undergoing female genital mutilation or social isolation, because it signifies this transition into womanhood, right? And so, we just listed off some stats around period poverty in the U.S. The first citywide study ever done on period poverty in St. Louis found that 46% of low-income women have to choose between a meal and period products every month, right? 46%. And so I think that, kind of to your point, and I didn't know that when I got into this either. Like, when I was 16 and I learned about period poverty for the first time, it was the same reaction of, I've never thought about this, because periods are so stigmatized. We barely think about our own periods, much less sit here wondering, like, what it's like for other people to get their periods, right? But so that's kind of how I think of it in terms of the end goal being gender equality, and this really being a key to accelerating that.
And do you think that we don't think about it or find awareness of it until we have conversations like this, because we aren't talking about it either because it's so stigmatized?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest barriers to this movement right now is that people do not think or talk about periods, right? Like, to your point, when we have our own periods, a lot of our personal relationships with our periods are like, this is a hassle. How do I take care of it so I don't have to think about it? Right? Like, how can I use whatever tools in front of me? So, like, the way period product companies market to us, and how they have since the introduction of them in the 1930s, is buy our products so you forget you're on your period. Right? Like, so it becomes this thing that we're constantly trying to ignore, and I get it, right? You don't want to feel like you're on your period, but at the same time, it means you're not thinking about your own, much less wondering or imagining what it's like for someone else to get their period.
Right.
What about you?
I think I always knew about period poverty, but I didn't know it had a name. You know what I mean? Like, I grew up in the inner city. I've been in positions where I couldn't afford tampons in high school, and, like, I couldn't afford pads, or, like, definitely wore a pad way too long because I just didn't have money to, like, get another one, and definitely knew other people in situations like that. I just never, and I think to speak from that perspective, that's another thing that adds to the lack of knowledge, is that, like, some people are just, this is life, and they're not even thinking about it in the sense of, like, this shouldn't be happening. Because I know when it was happening to me, there was no higher level of awareness that there's systems in place and there's reasons why this is happening to me. I was just like, oh, that's just life, and life is sometimes hard, and this is a part of life. Sometimes being hard and whatever. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until I got older that I was like, oh, I really shouldn't even have to pay for this. You know what I mean? Like, this is something that should just be given.
Can you expand a little bit more about that? First of all, thank you for sharing. But when you when you were experiencing that, like, tell us a little bit more about what it was like, right? Like, what what did you use when you didn't have access to period products?
Just, like, get a bunch of tissue, like, roll it into a wad. You know what I mean? Just to, like, keep it moving, you know, until you got some money to go buy yourself some pads and some tampons or whatever it is.
Was it something you talked about with other friends? Like,
for sure, absolutely. Nah, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, beyond just, like, I don't have any, do you have any? But beyond that, it wasn't like, I can't afford them right now, because it just is such an embarrassing, it's embarrassing not to be able to afford anything you need for yourself to, like, survive. And then even more embarrassing when it's, like, attached to your, like, period. So definitely wasn't, like, being vocal in that way about it, but just kind of, like, pushing through, you know?
Do you think it affected any other parts of your life? Like, well, for example, one of the things that our study was looking at was the emotional aspects of period poverty as well, right? Or I think one of the stats was around how one of the leading emotions around period or getting your period in the first place was scared, right? Like, and that was shocking to me, because I thought one of the leading emotion of getting your first period would be, like, embarrassed, but we found that it was actually, like, unprepared, right? That people, we don't talk about it, people don't learn about it, so the biggest feeling is, like, scared and unprepared. I'm wondering if you can expand upon, like, what were the emotions around not having access to period products?
I mean, I think it was just more like, if I'm just being honest, I can't really separate the emotion specifically to that, because kind of like, if you're coming up in poverty, like, if you can't afford period products, there's probably a lot of other things you can't afford. And so it just becomes like a condition of poverty more so. And so, like, I can't specifically say not being able to do that made me feel something, but not being able to have things I need definitely makes you feel less valued in the world.
Of course. What about you, Laura? Yasmin?
Yeah, so I was a 5th grade teacher as my career start, which was very interesting for many reasons. But I think for me, period poverty bubbled up in my 3rd year of teaching when I had an all-girls class. And, like, 5th grade, all girls, it was like period bombs going off all throughout the year of, like, this one's got their period and this one's got their period. And one of my students came to me after the night before she got her period, and her mom had put together this, like, sweet little hygiene kit bundle for her so that she could feel really, like, proud and empowered to have her period. And it was amazing because, you know, just juxtaposed with my own traumatic experience and sort of that shame always of, like, tucking the tampon up your sleeve or having the pad in your back pocket and going to, like, insane lengths to make other people comfortable at the expense of our own comfort. It was really powerful to see this young person, like, fully embrace what it meant to have a period. And I thought, like, okay, that's amazing, but not all of my students had access to that at home. And at school, we were on the 4th floor of this, like, gorgeous old building, school building housing up in the Bronx. And it meant that every time my student didn't have access to a pad or a tampon, they would have to go downstairs, miss out on like 15 minutes of learning time. And it really got me thinking, like, the cumulative effects for my students over time, over the many years that they're students and have periods in an environment that's not designed for them to be successful in, basically. Like, that is so wrong. So from that day forward, we always had a box of pads and tampons available that, like, our students could go grab, no questions asked. But it also got me thinking, too, because my school at the time didn't prioritize period education. I think one of the other interesting stats was from our study was that 76% of young people feel that we're taught more about the biology of frogs than we are about, like, the human body and what it means to have a period, which is so true and so insane that we're prioritizing, which is obviously very important, knowing basic anatomy, but when we're totally hiding and erasing the experience of, like, half of the student population, that sends such a clear message. Like, our restrooms aren't set up for your basic biological needs. Our school environment is not set up. So there's, like, this sort of double effect of missing out on access to products that you need and then access to the information that you need to be, like, a full autonomous human being. So I think that was really a powerful moment, and I think it's something that we feel really strongly at thinx about. We run our own in-house puberty education program for young people and wanted to prioritize as much sort of access to products as much as access to medically accurate knowledge.
Amazing. What about you?
I'm kind of like Sam. I feel like I've known about what the concept is without knowing the name of it for a while. A couple years ago, we were on this tour, and I'm sure a lot of the crew watching will remember this, but we did community service in every city that we had a show. And for the LA show, we did a tour of a women's shelter downtown, and we cleaned up the streets a little bit and handed out water. And I struck up a conversation with this woman who was living on the street. And she talked about her period and how she just, like, has no support there, and she just is in discomfort for her period every single month. And it was really, really jarring for me because it had never occurred to me that there are people out there who don't have what I have for such a simple biological thing. Like, it just never occurred to me. So I think it was that moment where I'm like, holy shit, I'm sure so many women that I don't even think about deal with this every single month, a quarter of their life.
I think that's the most beautiful thing about this movement, too, or I guess the beautiful thing about menstruation is that regardless of who you are, your socioeconomic background, what religion you practice, how you identify, like, if you were assigned female at birth, chances are you'll menstruate for an average of 40 years of your life on a monthly basis, right? Ooh. That it's like this huge equalizer, right? Of, like, it is this basic natural need. But I think that's why the stigma is so thought-provoking to me, because it's, how is this such a common experience that we completely have erased from open dialogue, right? So one of the big things that the menstrual movement is focusing on right now is what we call the tampon tax. So when I started my organization, so, you know, I got into this for very personal reasons. I founded this organization after my family experience living without a home of our own, and after I heard stories directly from homeless women living in much worse living situations than I was in, heard their stories of using toilet paper and socks and brown paper grocery bags and cardboard to take care of their periods. And the final straw for me in thinking, like, okay, I need to take action, was learning about the tampon tax. Because now the number is 33, but 4 years ago, 40 states in the U.S. had a sales tax on period products, considering them luxury items, right? Meanwhile, products like Rogaine, Viagra, and penile pumps are considered essential goods. And I remember that was the defining fact of being like, are you fucking kidding me? What? Like, I had to Google actually what Rogaine and Viagra were, but then I was like, old man hair growth and erections are considered more of a necessity than over half of our population feeling clean, confident, and capable 100% of the time, right? So I wanted to kind of turn it over to you and say, like, when you hear about that, right, when you hear about the tampon tax, what is your emotional reaction to it, and why do you think that something like that exists, right? And it's not just in the U.S., right? I was just in Sweden. Their tampon tax is 25%, right? On average, our state tampon tax is 6%. Theirs 25%, right? India just took it down. Australia just took it down. But our majority of our states still have it, right? Why do you think that exists, and what do you think we can do to spread awareness about this?
So many thoughts. Number one, it's, like, fucked up. I think just from, as we were talking about this idea of menstrual equity as an extension of gender equity, and if you, like, really just zoom out to that level, and you know, while 7 cents, 12 cents, a few dollars, that is a major barrier for a lot of folks. And the difference between being able to afford versus being not able to afford or being unable to afford, symbolically too, I think sends a really powerful message about your biology is therefore... it's like a tax on your biology, basically, and a tax on something that is just a basic biological process. It's a necessity, as we've all experienced. Being without a period product sucks, and just is not a way to be like a full autonomous human being in this world.
It's like if we put a tax on lotion because we knew dudes used it to jack off. It's
right,
just weird.
right.
Yeah.
It's just weird. It's just like...
But it's also even a step further because, like, menstruation is not something you can control, where you could argue that jacking off is something you can control.
Well, men will argue that jacking off is something they absolutely cannot.
Yes, it's true. What about you? Emotional reactions? Why? You said something really profound over lunch of, like, why the system would allow something like the tampon tax to exist.
It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
This is probably echoing Obama.
Yeah.
I think we were just talking about his reaction when he found out that there was a tax on tampons, right? Mm-hmm. That, like, you have to question who's writing the laws, who's in power. Yeah. Like, this goes back to the big picture where it's like we need to have more balance, so we have representation.
Advocacy up high that would say, like, hey, that's not cool.
Yeah, exactly. We need people representing us. So essentially it's more diversity in positions of power. But it's like a top-down and a down-up effect where it's like we have to change culture and shift culture so that we can have a more open dialogue and destigmatize the periods and the conversation around periods and the way menstruators feel about menstruating. But at the same time, top-down needs to make a difference, and hopefully there we can meet halfway.
Yeah.
Is there a tax on toilet paper?
In some states, yeah. Yeah. But it's interesting because the reason the tampon tax gets people so angry is that it specifically taxes a non-essential good, right? So it's taxed in this way of, like, labeling these products as a luxury.
Because you don't need it.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
a luxury.
Yeah.
That in itself, I feel like we're inherently, like, ingesting that, like, that perception of our periods when it's called a luxury item.
And maybe one day, like, a year, every woman should just not wear their shit.
Free
just
bleed.
period.
Everywhere. Period.
You think
the
campaign?
streets.
That's what it is. Now what?
Yeah.
You said this was a luxury item.
Right.
Totally.
Well, I think, it's really interesting because I think that, I'm always asked, like, okay, if we're focused on period poverty, why are we talking about the tampon tax, right? Because arguably the tampon tax is only affecting people who are already buying the product, right? Meaning they have the money to buy the product. What I always try to frame it as is the tampon tax is this beautiful Trojan horse to talk about period poverty, right? Because the reason we're still fighting for basic access to menstrual products in schools, shelters, and prisons is because these products are not seen as necessities. They're seen as luxury items. And the tampon tax literally takes that and puts it into concrete law that period products are not considered essential goods, right? And so that's why I think, like, taking down the tampon tax is this precedent of taking down the stigma and defining menstrual products as essential goods. And I think it's very telling, to your point, of, like, the people who made these laws have never experienced period poverty, right? And it is also telling in why we need non-menstruating cisgender, mostly white male politicians to also be involved in this movement as well, right? And this is not just a women's issue, but this is something that affects people with periods. It affects, like, there are these externalities that affect overall society, and we all have to be involved in this, whether or not you get a period. Yeah.
I mean, to that point, it's like we know that it's not going to be next year that we have 50% of females in power. It's just not going to happen like that. So you have to get the people who are in power to understand and be aware and come to the side where they understand how it's like to live like this.
Yeah, absolutely. You said something that I picked up on about how we have to change culture before we change policy and everything, and I love that. So as a kind of way to end off the conversation, would love to hear a little bit more about how you're using your platforms or the work that you're doing to change that culture. What do you have coming up in the new year as we think about the menstrual movement and arguably 2020 being a huge year for, our country, being a huge year where there's a lot at stake in terms of reproductive rights and everything from access to abortion, basic reproductive health. What are you doing about this and how can people support?
We just did a period packing at our show in New Orleans, and it is something that we'll continue to do at our shows. It was probably one of the coolest meet and greet community service things we've done, because I would you say half the people who came were men?
Yeah,
Just
I'd
about.
say so, yeah.
They were so into it. They were none of them were weird about it. They were just like touching tampons, pads, packing things, and they were so like gung-ho. And the energy and the attitude was so positive. No weird vibes, no like snickering in the background. So I think us being able to do that and bringing the awareness in that way, just normalizing, is something that's so simple for us to do. We do the meet and greet. It's a time for us to be with our fans, spread the awareness. So we're definitely going to keep implementing that into our show life, our tour life.
I love that.
I think as far as talking about like the fear and the shame and the embarrassment that comes with menstruation, I think that puts more negative energy just out in the world in general, and I just don't think it's a productive or it's a helpful emotion, those emotions to have. So I think if we can shift our perspectives to see this as like a magical, beautiful thing, despite all the pain and like whatever sort of delusion we might experience when our hormones are out of control. But that's something that like I really hope for our societies, because we tend to like value intellectualizing things, and it's a world that has been like designed and run by the masculine. And I think like who doesn't want balance? I think like that's something we haven't tried. We've been upholding the status quo for like centuries. And if we really want to be forward thinking, I think it's doing something different. We have to do something different, and that's creating space for those who menstruate and the feminine energy. And we talk about this a lot. It's just like all this mysterious, unexplainable stuff that's happening in our body that's causing us to bleed is magic. It really is. And I think there's so much we have to offer, whether that's, being more in touch with our intuition or instincts, stuff that's deemed as like woo-woo or just not real because it's not tangible. And I think that could be like, that's so important for like the future of this country, the future of our world, even when we think about our relationship with the environment and nature. And it's a whole other tangent.
I love it.
Such an intersectional topic, too.
Oh,
I think,
yeah.
it really is really powerful.
Yeah.
At thinx, we have a lot of big things planned, which is exciting. I think, as we always do, we're going to continue breaking the stigma just through open conversation and through like our unapologetic brand voice. That comes from a really genuine place, and I think we're really kind of excited that there are so many others joining the conversation also. We, for the past year, have been working with Period on this amazing grassroots activism campaign to provide funding for pads and tampons in school restrooms across the U.S. and really move the needle forward on menstrual equity. So next year, we are going to be capitalizing on all of that momentum and elevating menstrual equity within the context of the presidential election. So more to come on that. I think we're really excited because our community is so jazzed up and like fired up about actually making change beyond just like supporting the brand and buying our underwear. They want to sign a petition. They want to come to a rally. They want to come to a protest. They want to help move the needle together. So let's just like keep knitting this work all together and like pulling from all of our corners. I think we're going to, 2020 is going to be a big year.
Yes.
Yeah.
As a stand-up, I feel like the main thing that I do is just an honest, open vessel that keeps these kind of dialogues flowing. I definitely use a lot of my platform as a stand-up to just talk about all women's issues and all race issues and all gender issues. And I try to stand firm on those things and not let audiences off the hook when they feel uncomfortable, which I think is a good way that an artist can hold people accountable in a room. Because when you have a show, you got 200 people, it's like, this is a time where you could influence 200 minds before they like walk out the door. And I do think that's a very special position to be in. I also, I have a lot of like male friends, and whenever I'm on my period, I don't like hide that. I'm just like, I'm on my period. I'm feeling some kind of way. Like maybe I am being a little more sensitive, but that's okay. If you're gonna be my friend, you just need to figure out how to deal with me in this energy, and that's just what it is. But I'm not gonna be ashamed or hide that or run from that anymore, and I don't do that in any space, which I also think helps push the dial up.
Yes.
I think that's a beautiful way to kind of end off, is that, you know, what you're saying, the barrier to entry is so low in terms of destigmatizing periods, right? You don't have to start a nonprofit or do something to be a part of this movement. It can be as simple as turning to your neighbor and being like, yo, like, why are we so uncomfortable to talk about periods, right? It can be as simple as when you are going to the bathroom and you're holding a period product, try not sticking it up your sleeve, right? Try walking around, challenge yourself, show people period products. It can be small actions like that as well. Or click the live donate button on your screen. Well, thank you so much for joining Period Talk, and thank you to everyone who tuned in. We're so excited. As Laura said, 2020 is going to be a really, really big year. We're so excited for. There's a lot at stake, and you know, I'm really passionate about the menstrual movement, with one of the reasons being that I think it's solvable. Like, unlike most poverty-related issues, we know what legislation we need to pass. We know the communities we're trying to target. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to work together.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.